Welcome everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Geektopia. I'm your host as always, Barry, and today's podcast is just going to be me talking about and ranking the movies in the DCEU. Now, let's face it, the DCEU hasn't really gone according to plan. I'm a huge DC fan. It's not all been doom and gloom, they've had some good films, but I think ultimately, I think it's safe to say that it's been a disappointment overall. I don't actually think there's a single film in the DCEU that I actually love. There are some films I do like, but it's kind of been hit and miss. There hasn't really been any level of consistency, and to be honest, not to compare it to the MCU, which obviously Disney have done a great job in creating, carefully constructing this cinematic universe and that. The DCEU hasn't really found any kind of solid footing. And as a DC fan, it really frustrates me. It really does frustrate me. It annoys the hell out of me. I think ultimately things were rushed. But anyway, I'm not going to keep going on about that. So I'm just going to be ranking the films in the DCEU. Okay. Now, in the bottom spot here, this was tough. There were actually 3 films actually jostling for this spot. But I think ultimately what has to go there for me is 2016 Suicide Squad, which I really didn't care for. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn was probably the best thing to come out of that film. I think the movie ultimately was hindered by reshoots. The whole tone of the film was changed, and I think it was just ultimately butchered by the studio. It's not one of the worst films ever made or anything like that, but it's a pretty weak comic book film. It's very disappointing. I've been reading the Suicide Squad for years now, and I love the Suicide Squad. I had some pretty high hopes for this film. I think it was marketed really well. Just unfortunately, the film just completely falls flat. I really didn't take to Jared Leto's Joker. It's Will Smith being Will Smith as Deadshot. It's not very good. It's just not very good. I've got some pretty high hopes for James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which is actually out later this year. I'm just hoping he can do for DC, for Suicide Squad, what he's done for Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Suicide Squad, disappointing. Did actually have some pretty high expectations actually for that movie. It was a box office success, but obviously most fans didn't really care for it, and it certainly didn't go down well with critics. The next film, just above it, is Wonder Woman 1984, which very disappointing. Again, not one of the worst films ever made or anything like that, but this is Wonder Woman. She's such an icon. She deserves a better film than this. Wonder Woman 2017, I liked. I didn't love, but I liked it. This is a film that had been delayed, almost countless times because of the situation that we're in. And it was just a mess of a film. About half an hour too long. It's 2.5 hours long. I think this film has real pacing issues. I think ultimately what really lets the film down is just the writing. It's just kind of the uninteresting story. Wonder Woman's such an iconic character. There's over 80 years worth of storylines to do there. And they choose a wishing stone, basically, which is more akin to a fantasy movie as opposed to a Wonder Woman film. It's just a contrast to the 2017 film we got. It has its little moments here and there, but these little moments are very few and far between. And Pedro Pascal, I thought he did great, but unfortunately, the film in him, you could certainly see that he was giving it his all, but unfortunately, just the film around him, the film that he's in, just isn't particularly that good. And this isn't a film I had sky-high expectations for either. I will admit. There was a level, because I saw the trailers and that, and there was nothing really... I love the character of Wonder Woman, but there was nothing really exciting me about this film. Just above that now is Justice League, which I'd actually say is on par. I'd actually pretty much put this on par with Wonder Woman 84. Massive disappointment. Obviously, we're getting the Snyder Cut next month, March the 18th. Very much looking forward to that. This is a film that this film should have been back in 2017. Justice League is the most disappointing of all of the films in the DCEU. This is the one that really should have been DC's ace card. I honestly thought this film was going to be like $1 billion making film. It was actually the lowest grossing at the time, which is crazy. Suicide Squad made more money than Justice League, a film with Batman. But as we know, it was a tarnished product. This isn't the film that was originally meant for us. This got butchered by the studio, Joss Whedon's fingerprints all over it, tonally speaking, complete and utter contrast to Batman v Superman. And it was just a mess of a film. I think to me the most excited moment for me was the Deathstroke post-credit scene, which did actually make me nerdgasm, seeing Deathstroke on the big screen, which I've wanted to do, which I've wanted to see for a long time now, alluding towards A League of Doom, which unfortunately isn't going to happen now due to the massive underperformance of it at the box office. But Justice League, not very good. And Snyder Cut, I'm not saying that the Snyder Cut is going to be one of the best films ever made or anything like that, but it should be a vast improvement. At least we're getting a film that hasn't been tarnished. At least we're getting a film that Zack Snyder actually intended for us. So, yeah. Now, just above Justice League, this is where it gets a little kind of tough for me. Because obviously there's a few more films here. It's actually going to be Birds of Prey. Now, I really enjoyed Birds of Prey. I actually remember coming out of the cinema and thinking that was a really fun ride. It's not a Birds of Prey film, though. It's a Harley Quinn film. She steals the show. I mean, Margot Robbie is great as Harley Quinn. I think it's safe to say that she's already cemented herself in that role. She's perfectly cast. I think the film's aesthetics work well. I mean, she's very much kind of DC's equivalent to Marvel's Deadpool now. Whole breaking the fourth wall and everything. And, it has some great fight choreography and that, from courtesy of the person that worked on the John Wick franchise. So that's to be expected. There's a lot of kind of slow-mo and stuff. It was a fun film, but it's kind of an empty shell of a movie. I thought it was a fun time, but then watching it a second time round, and it just, there's no story. There's just no, I mean, they're completely butchered. I'm a comic fan, and obviously Cassandra Cain's in this film. They completely butchered her for the sake of this movie. She's a little girl. I mean, she's one of the greatest martial artists in all of DC. She's somebody that could go toe-to-toe and even potentially beat Batman, and she's just a little girl that steals a diamond in this film. I think the casting overall, Cassandra Cain aside, was pretty good. I mean, I quite liked Ewan McGregor's Black Mask. Black Mask is a Batman villain I've actually wanted to see on the big screen for a while. I think he did a perfectly fine job. I would have liked to have seen the Black Mask on him for longer. Much like with Will Smith, Deadshot in Suicide Squad, I would have liked to have seen the Deadshot mask a lot more. But I think with Will Smith being the Hollywood A-class actor that he is, they didn't want to keep his face covered up for too long. So I think there's only 3 scenes in the entire film where he wears it. But I think McGregor did a kind of a good job, actually, of trying to portraying that kind of those sociopathic tendencies. The Black Mask goes from hot to cold. He's very much a sadistic psychopath, and did a pretty good job. I think the kind of homoerotic kind of undertones with him and Victor Zsasz, now I'm not homophobic or anything, was just unnecessary and really unneeded for the film. I really didn't understand as to why that was injected into the movie. So I thought it was kind of a fun film. It was a fun movie. It is the Margot Robbie show, definitely. I would have liked to have probably seen a bit more from Huntress. Actually, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I actually think is a great actress, really good actress. But overall, it was okay. It was okay, but at the same time, it's not a film that it's not a film that I would return to again. I think it's an empty shell, pretty much kind of an empty shell of a movie. Fun for the runtime, but that's it. Now, just above Birds of Prey, actually, this is where it starts to get a little tougher. I'm gonna put Aquaman there. Aquaman, I liked it. I did like it. It's good to see Aquaman getting the big screen treatment. He's a character that's been, the subject of ridicule for decades now. But clearly, by casting someone like Jason Momoa, they're looking for Aquaman to be a character to be taken seriously. And yeah, Aquaman, it's a big CG fest, as you'd expect. It's the only way you're going to be able to achieve a movie like this. Very big budget, directed by James Wan. Obviously, most renowned for horror. He has directed a Fast and the Furious film. We're not going to talk about that. So yeah, him kind of veering into other genres. I mean, this is the guy that directed the first two Insidiouses, the first Saw, first two Conjurings, and then he's directing an Aquaman movie. I think originally he was going to direct the Flash movie, and he actually passed that up to do Aquaman instead. Yeah, Aquaman. Yeah, I mean, it's an origin story. It's quite good. I mean, it certainly has its moments. I like what they did with Black Manta in this film. Patrick Wilson, I always like seeing Patrick Wilson playing obviously Orm, Ocean Master, Arthur Curry's half brother. It certainly had its moments. I mean, it's one of them films. It certainly has some real moments of cheese though. The hero shot with Momoa, finally winning the Trident and his classic Aquaman outfit, walking out from the waterfall. What a cheesy moment! It was the classic kind of hero shot that you get from a panel, in a comic book. So that's obviously what they were going for. It just looks so cheesy on screen, like a real kind of L'Oreal commercial shot. But overall, I mean, it was good. You could probably say maybe it was a little too long, but it was an origin story and so forth. So it's about just over 2 hours, 20 minutes, I think. But I thought this, I mean, it's hard to believe, but Aquaman's the highest grossing film in the DCEU as well. Who would have thought an Aquaman movie would make more money than a Superman film or a Justice League film or a Wonder Woman movie? It's crazy, but the film made like $1.1 billion at the box office. But I don't think Aquaman's that bad. I don't think it's that bad of a film. I have issues with it, certainly. There's just moments that are just so kind of nonsensical and whatnot. But I think Momoa is all right. He looks nothing like Arthur Curry from the comics. They wanted to kind of veer away from that. I think he makes a perfectly good Aquaman. And I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what more they do with him. So yeah. Now, just above Aquaman would actually be Shazam. Shazam I thought was good fun. Really good fun. I think this film had the potential to do better at the box office than what it did. It did well. It made profit. But unfortunately, it was sandwiched between two bigger films. Captain Marvel, which made like 1.1 billion, and Endgame, highest grossing film of all time now. And I think ultimately Shazam kind of suffered for that. It was sandwiched between them two Marvel movies. I really enjoyed it. I think this film was funny. Most of the humour actually worked for me. What I love about it as well is kind of, we've got a character like Batman that's born out of tragedy, but a character like Shazam, it's very much revolved around wish fulfillment. I thought Zachary Levi did a great job. It was a film that was funny, but there was heart there. There was heart. And Mark Strong in there as Dr. Zavanna. I thought it was a really fun time. I particularly like Billy Batson's best friend in the movie, the geek. He reminded me of me. It was like a little version of me geeking out over the Batarang and geeking out over everything superhero related, etc. So I thought Shazam was a good fun film, and I thought it was kind of a step in the right direction for DC and the DC universe and that. I know a lot of people really liked it and the critics really cared for it. It wasn't I mean, we're getting a sequel, which I'm actually quite looking forward to. I mean, Shazam isn't one of my favourite DC characters or anything like that. He's not like my top 5 or probably not even my top 10. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, the thing is, he is the original Captain Marvel as well. It's the ironic thing. Shazam and Captain Marvel come out within just a few weeks of each other. So Shazam. Now, just above Shazam, this will cause some controversy. I know it will. Wonder Woman's in third place. Wonder Woman was good. I didn't love it, but it was good. Wonder Woman was at least, I thought, kind of a step in the right direction. Released in 2017, and that I was very apprehensive actually about Gal Gadot's casting because I don't rate her, and I still don't. I don't rate her as an actress, but I think she's cemented herself in that role now. She does certainly bring that physicality to the role. I still don't, as I said, I still don't really rate her as an actress, but I think she's definitely cemented herself as Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman. What can I say? I mean, yeah, it was a box office success. The critic reviews were really good. I kind of like the fact it was set in World War One, and I think certainly her and Steve Trevor, Chris Pine certainly had some chemistry in that as well. It certainly had some great moments. Again though, the kind of there's a lot of slow mo and all this and that, and but it definitely had its moments. It definitely had its. I mean, it has one of the most nonsensical moments in the whole of the DCEU, in my opinion, is where she walks into that function going on wearing a dress and she's got a frigging sword behind her back and not one person notices. I was watching that thinking, what the hell? Wouldn't they notice a woman walking in with a massive sword behind her back? But that's cosmetic. Good to see Ares. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if I was too keen on the cast in there. But it's certainly, Wonder Woman 2017 is certainly, without a doubt, one of the best films in the DCEU, in my opinion. And it was good to finally see a good female superhero film, because we'd never had one. We had Catwoman in 2004, we had Elektra the following year, Supergirl. We'd never actually had a good female superhero movie. Wonder Woman was the first. But yeah, as I say, I didn't love it, had some issues with it, but it's still good. Second place is Batman v Superman. Again, massively disappointing, but I still like it. I still like the film. I think there's enough in there to appreciate. I don't feel as though it was executed anywhere near as good as what it could have been. I think unfortunately the film was essentially rushed. Batfleck should have had his own solo film. There should have probably been a Man of Steel 2 before this film as well, kind of like a build up to this movie. It clearly takes elements from Dark Knight Returns. It's seeing Batman and Superman on the screen for the first time together on the big screen. That in itself is a massive selling point. This is the most excited I'd ever been for a movie, not just a comic book film, but a movie. And unfortunately, I walked away disappointed. But at the same time, I've watched it a few times since, and I've come to appreciate it a little bit more. I thought Batfleck was fine as Batman. Unfortunately, he probably didn't have necessarily the best material to work with. It's very philosophical. The movie has, there's a level of depth to it, but maybe it's just not executed as well. As I said, it's not the film it could have been and should have been, because unfortunately it was there to really kind of lay the groundwork for the Justice League as well. So it wasn't solely focused on Batman and Superman. It was focused on trying to lay the groundwork here. But disappointing. I know obviously it didn't go well down with most critics. It was hated upon, and while it was a box office success, it was kind of, I think even Warner Brothers were like, this should have made more. This is Batman and Superman, the two most iconic characters in the history of comic books. This should be a $1 billion making film plus. But yeah, I mean, some great moments in there. I love the warehouse scene with Batman. That's what I've always wanted to see. Like it's been lifted right out of the video game franchise, the Arkham series. I've always wanted to see Batman really kick ass on screen. I mean, that scene was great. The Batman-Superman encounter, while really good, was, I thought, really short-lived. I was expecting a bit more of an epic encounter. Could have been a bit longer. I love seeing the Batsuit. The armoured Batsuit, though, was just absolutely awesome. Just seeing that. So, but it was... I personally think it's quite good, but at the same time, it should have been better than good. So, yeah. So that leads me on to the top spot now. And this is the film that I think is certainly one of the most divisive films in the whole of the DCEU, Man of Steel. And ironically, it's the one that started it all as well. released back in 2013. I really like Man of Steel. I have issues with it. You know, it has its flaws, as pretty much every film does. But I thought it was a really a good depiction, a new kind of a realistic depiction, if you will, of if an alien being was living on this planet, the conflict he'd be in. You know, he's got his biological father telling him to be a god, be a hero. His adopted father actually telling him to hide in sight, you know, live like a normal person. And I thought Henry Cavill made for a good Superman. I think the problem is a lot of people couldn't kind of get past the kind of Christopher Reeve era. And, you know, this film's obviously a lot more serious, a lot more bleak. I thought Michael Shannon was great as Zod as well. A villain, but you can fully understand his motivations. He's a villain that you can really kind of, in a way, sympathize with to a degree. I thought this was great. I thought this was a good film. You know, and you know, the fight with Zod towards the end, I think, is one of the greatest fights, one of the best moments in the DCEU as well. You know, and just kind of unfortunate. I like how the film was structured as well, because obviously Christopher Nolan was like a producer on this. In that it's structured like with Batman Begins, which is actually, I think, one of the best Batman films out there. In which, you know, it goes from the present to the past and how it's structured. And I actually did like how this film was structured. And I'll admit, Zack Snyder, I think, is a director that struggles to balance great visuals with good cohesive storytelling at times. I think he's a great visual director. Okay, admittedly, most of his films are kind of CG heavy and stuff, but I just think a lot of his visuals are just beautiful to look at. Personally, I know he's a director that some people really hate upon and stuff, and you know, I don't think Zack Snyder is one of the best directors of all time or anything like that. But at the same time, I do think he's a very good visual director, but things aren't always executed as best. But Man of Steel is probably my favourite Superman film, aside from 1978 Superman. Or maybe just behind Superman 2, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's my personal favourite film. As I said, in the DCEU, and I just thought Henry Cavill did a good job of playing this conflicted individual. I mean, Superman's a character; he's a symbol of hope, and I get it. There's no symbol of hope in this film. He's a man at conflict with himself, and with BVS as well. He very much has a dark cloud looming over him the entire film. You know, we're probably not going to get Cavill back. Which is a shame, a missed opportunity, because I really feel like he has cemented himself in that role, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Snyder Cut. The black suited Superman as well, without the CG'd moustache. So, yeah, but Man of Steel is my personal favourite, number one. But in a way, I kind of get why it's divisive. I mean, it did well at the box office. You know, it's not one of the highest grossing comic book films of all time or anything. It doesn't need to be. It did well enough. But the reviews were very mixed. It's kind of one of them films. There's a very big divide with Man of Steel. I'm one of them people that doesn't love it, but I do really like it, and I have watched it quite a few times as well. So yeah, that's it. I think that's pretty much it now. So that's my personal rankings. So thanks to everyone that listened. Take care, and I'll be back again soon.